still on 5. Oh, hello, fellow gastronomes, and welcome to Dirty Belly, where we take you on a journey as your food goes from dirt to your belly. I'm your host, a dad who loves to eat and grow, Jeff Sims. I am here today with our resident culinarian, Matthew Gaddis.
Hi. Here, it's me. I'm here, right here.
And a special shout out to our producer, Will Gray, who's floating out there in the ether somewhere, lost in space.
I heard he found the car that Elon shot into space. He's just cruising.
Nice. He's finally got a good place to sleep then.
Oh yeah, a big backseat, big
Yeah.
backseat.
He's got his sleeping bag. He's set to go. Homeless in space sounds okay to me, actually.
Are you really homeless if you're in space? That seems like a journey.
No, well, here's the thing about space. Nobody has a home in space, right?
I don't know about that. I feel like aliens have a home.
Yeah. The people who live on the space station, is that their home?
I don't know if I can. Oh man, that's existential right there. I think temporary.
That's a true Airbnb. You know what I'm saying? The true definition of Airbnb is what is it? The United Space Station? What is the USSS or something like that?
ISS, man, International Space Station.
International, yeah.
That baby is Mr. Worldwide, even though we're going to take it apart.
What am I thinking? We're definitely not united as a planet, so I don't know why it would be called United anything. The ununited space station.
You know what we are united in? It's food, damn it. Let's go.
Yeah, everybody eats, right? And that's what's great. That's what's great about food. It's the one thing that you share with everyone that on the planet is that we all eat. And a lot of people are going to be eating this coming up weekend for Easter, right? Easter brunch. So that's our episode this week, an Easter brunch episode. Not a specific ingredient. We'll be talking about a lot of different things, including the history of Easter, of course, the history of brunch, presented by Matthew Gaddis. But first, of course, we're going to start out with some dirt in our bellies. Matt, what you got? Because yours is going to blow mine out of the water.
Oh, brother, I am so excited. Really wanted to do this for a couple of weeks since we've been talking about this subject, but I went to Shotgun Willie's. It is a barbecue restaurant over here on the east side on Gallatin Pike. SGW Barbecue on Instagram. Check them out. They're a true Texas barbecue place. They sell out every single day. Like I was there at 1:30. They were already sold out of half their sides. They sold out of their meats like 20 minutes later. So I had the ribs, which are Texas style, just salt and pepper pork ribs. Pork is not huge in Texas, but the ribs still have a place in Texas barbecue. They were fantastic. Perfect amount of chew on them. A lot of people think like fall off the bone ribs are the best, but I'm in the school of thought that a little bit of texture, a little bit of bite is really perfect. Had a jalapeno cheddar smoked sausage link, which is so fatty, it's criminal.
Made in house, I assume.
Oh, of course. Yeah, there's so much fat in that thing that it's just juice when you bite into it. And of course, brisket. Brisket is a staple of Texas barbecue,
And it's the true test.
It absolutely is. Like if your brisket is good, then you've got a fan for life with me. And theirs is among the probably top two I've ever had in Tennessee. It's really something special. Perfectly smoked, perfectly tender, perfectly trimmed. Trimming brisket is something that I am not good at, but it's an incredibly important part of the process.
Yeah, there's some of the fat you want to leave on, and a lot of it you want to take off when you're going to smoke it.
Yeah, the general rule is the hard fat you want to get rid of because that does not render. But the rest of it'll render throughout the smoking process, and it's beautiful. If anyone here has had the luck to go to Austin, Texas, to Franklin Barbecue, you'll see a lot of parallels with Shotgun Willie's. With butcher paper and everything. I'm pretty sure, I don't want to make a false promise here, but I'm pretty sure they even have Lone Star beer, which is very difficult to find in Tennessee. Uh, Aside from the perfection of the meats, which it turns out I blew a lot of money getting ribs, sausage, and brisket, which is the Texas Trinity. Aside from that, I got some green beans, which are fantastic. There's a little bit of ham and bacon in there, just meaty, classic Southern green beans. And cornbread was my other side. And cornbread can be so divisive. It's always either too dry or too wet or not seasoned enough. I found this to be fantastic. It's the first time I've had their cornbread, and the moisture level on it was perfect. I in my past, I've even abandoned the idea of cornbread altogether and done a cream corn bread pudding for a menu instead of trying to fight the good fight of cornbread. And turns out I was wrong. They nailed it. So it can be done.
Yeah, cornbread is a very divisive subject. And would you say it was like a southern or northern style cornbread?
I think as far as like moisture and fat content, I mean, it had to be very southern style. Like
Yeah.
it held its shape. Like it wasn't soggy or anything like that. Like it was airy enough to create a nice fluffy piece. But as soon as you got your fork into it, all of the fat started to like collect and become this nice like mushy bite. And of course, there's jalapeno and cheese in it, so you can't really go wrong there.
Yeah, a good northern cornbread a lot of times can be more like cake than cornbread. Like you feel like you should put icing on it sometimes. It's so sweet, and they put a lot of regular flour in it. It's not just cornmeal.
Dude,
Um,
threaten me with a good time. I put icing on cornbread. Yep.
that's our thing. We're gonna start a restaurant. That's gonna be our thing. Iced cornbread.
That's the whole thing. The whole
Yeah, it's all we do. We just do iced cornbread. If people have donut restaurants, right? Why not, man? You don't think people in the South would go crazy for iced cornbread? I think I think we're onto something here. I don't have much on the dirt I
restaurant.
put in my belly this week. I've been dealing with a case of the bubble guts, and
Oh,
I really haven't been eating much of anything. I managed to eat some cereal this morning, Cheerios, yummy. I did have some reheated pepperoni pizza last night, so it was good to get that down. You can actually go to last week's episode and compare my face from this week to last week, and you can tell I've lost weight because of this illness I've been fighting off. But
right. Just for because of the principle of brunch, you're just so upset about it.
well, I can tell you what, whenever I am ready to eat again, it's going to be a smorgasbord, and
there,
that
there.
brings us,
I got
yeah,
some terminology coming up. Yeah.
yeah, that brings us to our subject of the week, the Easter brunch, which is a veritable smorgasbord because, what is Easter brunch? It's a brunch on Easter, of course. And Easter for many Christians is the end of Lent, where they have been abstaining from things for 40 days. Uh, and now they get to eat, so people kind of go ham on it. You know what I mean? Easter brunch a lot of times is the most extravagant of the Christian ritual meals that
It's
people eat.
Mardi Gras, but on the other end.
Yes, Mardi Gras without the drinking and partying, right?
Well,
um, well, it depends, right? Because some people, alcohol is not prohibited. It's not Islam, so some people do partake quite a bit of alcohol on Easter, especially in the Catholic arena.
coming.
Brunch specifically comes from England in the 19th century. It was created as a late breakfast for people who stayed out late on Saturday nights. So that's a lot of us, right? Basically exactly what it's used for today is exactly what it was created for. So that's brunch, really. It's just people that overslept through breakfast but aren't quite ready for a full lunch yet, and
God, I
uh,
love it.
yeah, that's just what it is, right? Now, when we're talking about Easter specifically, of course, we're talking about the Christian celebration of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. When you look at the Abrahamic religions, the traditions were often passed down through ritual meals, beginning with the Passover meal, and Easter brunch is kind of a continuation of that. While it's not specifically mentioned in the Bible, it is the most celebrated um, Christian holiday on the planet, and people really eat a lot on this holiday. We have evidence. The earliest evidence we have it being celebrated um, is probably about 2nd century AD, although it was most likely celebrated before that. Realistically, we just don't have a lot of the early Christian records to know exactly what they were doing when. Um, so it brings us to the next question about the other half of Easter, right? The Easter Bunny. Where did the Easter Bunny come from? right? And the Easter Bunny specifically was created by German Lutherans, and it was kind of a version of Santa Claus, an Easter version of Santa Claus that would come and judge little children for their behavior on the Eastertide, the 40 days leading up to Easter. If you were good, you got candy and toys, and if you were bad, you got nothing,
I had
right?
no
Just
idea the Easter Bunny was so judgy.
yeah, well,
I didn't know where it came from, but I didn't know it was
oh
that.
yeah, no, look out, buddy. He's gonna tell you if you've been naughty or nice. All right, it's just like, and essentially, it's just an anthropomorphic Santa Claus, which I found to be really interesting. And I always thought it was, I always had this idea that it was like created later, maybe in like America, as like some sort of commercialization thing, but actually, it's a Christian tradition, as well as the Easter egg is also a Christian tradition. The
I
concept.
assumed it was just a spring relation, with bunnies and fertility and things like that. We all know how that goes.
Well, historically, eggs and rabbits both represented rebirth well before the time of Christ. But so and a lot of times those older traditions got married with Christian traditions as Christian traditions spread throughout the world. They kind of became one, right? The eggs and rabbits have symbolized rebirth since at least the Neolithic period. People were often buried with rabbits as a kind of a religious kind of ceremony kind of thing. The concept of the Easter egg specifically originated in the early Christian communities of Mesopotamia. They would dye the eggs red to symbolize the blood of Christ. The eggs themselves symbolize the empty tomb of Christ. And even today, the Eastern Orthodox Church actually blesses the eggs on Easter, and they paint them red to continue that symbolism. Obviously, in America, it's become much more commercialized, and it's kind of separated itself from the origins of the holiday. But
Now
that's
it's all
enough. That's
very
enough
big.
for religion, because we know you didn't come here for that. You came here for food. Okay.
This is
So
my for all of my religious information.
yes, uh, I'm going to ask you a question, Matt, to start us off here.
Let's go.
What does Easter mean to chefs?
Uh, Not gonna lie, the knee jerk reaction is, oh god. Uh, uh, Easter brunch, like Mother's Day brunch, like honestly any popular brunch. Brunch is largely known as the bane of a chef's existence. None of us want to be up early, and none of us want to be doing that kind of volume at 10 a.m. But we got to do it. On a more thoughtful note, though, as a chef, the true meaning of being a chef and serving people is putting smiles on faces. That's what we do. That's why we do what we do. And if we get an opportunity to serve families and to bring joy and to bring sustenance, you should never ever look at that opportunity and shirk away from it. So initially, boy, I hate a brunch, but by the end of it, without fail, every time I've worked any kind of brunch, especially a holiday brunch, I walk away rewarded that I got to bring some families together. I got to make people happy. I got to put smiles on faces, and that's very very important to me. I think any chef worth their salt would agree with that.
What an incredibly heartwarming perspective there, Matt. Because most chefs do dread these, especially like you said, Mother's Day and Easter, the two biggest brunches of the year, because you're going to be expected to do a lot, and you're going to have heavy crowds. No matter where you're at, people are coming out to eat. Okay, and it is a sense of dread, because you're going to have to either figure out a way to get up anyways, or you're gonna have to go to bed earlier the night before. You're gonna have to come in. You're gonna have to be there way earlier than ever. You're gonna have more work than any other brunch of the year.
Or just don't.
And
It's just late. It's not even
yeah,
early.
yeah, like I said, you're gonna have to figure it out somehow, right? uh, Now, a lot of times I've seen chefs get themselves into trouble trying the no sleep method, and I've been there. And you accidentally fall asleep, and then you roll in like an hour and a half late for
Yeah.
brunch, and yeah, you're in big trouble then. Okay, there's a couple days a year you never want to be late as a chef, and Easter and Mother's Day brunch are definitely top 5 days. Maybe we'll do that one day. The worst days to show up late as a chef, but
Got
um,
got some stories for maybe off pod or a different pod.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good way to get cussed out, you know? I mean, you're not gonna get fired on that day because they need you, but you're gonna
Oh,
get chewed up and down, right?
you're
And
saying
you
one more day.
yeah, you'll get those hours for sure, but you may not get the next day. Uh, but, you know, it's and like you said, it's one of those things that it's like it almost creates a sense of camaraderie with the crew because it's like you get in there together and you fight through it and everybody
Oh, buddy, I love. Oh, hey, there you are.
sports team, you know? At the end of it,
Yeah.
it brings us all together, and it's one of my favorite things about working in kitchens for so long was the camaraderie and the family type relationships that you create. Like, I mean, I met you guys in the kitchens, and we didn't talk for years, and then as soon as we get back together, it's like we're just best friends again. You know what I mean? And it's just I love those kind of connections that you create, and it's going through these kind of situations, these intense moments that really create those. So to me, that is what Easter means as a chef. It's a challenge, you know, and
One bit I wanted to touch on there, it seems like the right opportunity is before we get too far into the technicalities of the banquet, of the buffet, of the brunch. Easter leftovers, if you work in a place that does Easter brunch, is hugely important. Every time I've ever done an Easter buffet or a banquet or anything like that, you intentionally overcook. You make way more than you know you're going to need, because that means at the end of the meal, all of the team, the front of house, the back of house, the bussers, the dishwashers, the management, everybody, they get to come together and they enjoy the same quality food that they just served, and they get to be together because a lot of those people have families and they don't get to be with their family on Easter morning, if they, whether they'd like to or not. So it's really important to, we keep coming back to family meal on this podcast, but it's incredibly important, especially on a holiday, because you don't know what you're providing for someone. It could be the most important thing for them.
and it's probably the best family meal that your restaurant's gonna serve their staff the entire year.
Oh yeah.
And it's everybody usually, traditionally, in a kitchen after brunch, everybody will actually sit down together. With a lot of other family meals, it's kinda like, "Alright, we made up something cheap, left with scraps, and it's set out there, you just eat it when you can, right, over a trash can if you're a cook." But, you know, it really is a kind of a moment that brings us all together in the kitchen and the front of the house, and, you know, it's one of the few times you might see the kitchen and front of house actually really getting along, is after they've accomplished that together.
We love you,
But
front. Don't believe.
yeah, there's just you know, it's like sibling rivalry, you know? Uh, but, you know, yeah, it's an important thing for us as chefs to do these things and to go through them together. There are other holidays, of course, that are, also pretty rough on us, but, you know, these 2 are the 2 brunches: Mother's Day, Easter, and why don't you tell us a little bit about the history of brunch the history of buffets in general?
Yeah, went down a really fun deep dive here. Because to me, the difference between a regular brunch and an Easter brunch is the buffet. When you think Easter brunch, you don't think sitting down, getting food brought to your table. You think buffet. So let's get a little technical here. The first iteration of a buffet comes from Scandinavian culture in the 16th century. The Swedes call it a smorgasbord, which translates to the butter goose table. I love that. The Finnish, here's the one I'm gonna, the Bronsensbord. Love that. My buddy Christian, who knows these dialects, is going to be super upset with my pronunciation. So that was a small table full of hors d'oeuvres and usually schnapps for everyone to kind of settle in before a plated meal. The modern equivalent being, think of a like a cocktail reception before a dinner. Like everyone's mingling, everyone's having little bites, everyone's drinking, kind of loosening up. Uh, the modern iteration, at least in the United States, uh, comes from the 1940s. I want to say 1946, I believe, from Herb Cobb McDonald, who started the Buckaroo Buffet. And where else does the buffet start but Las Vegas, baby?
Yeah, I was gonna say it either has to be Vegas or Texas, like
It was absolutely Vegas. And the principle was to keep people in the casino, because if you have to leave the casino to eat, there's a good chance you're not coming back to the same building. But if
Oh,
you
yeah. If
still,
they could, they'd put toilets at the tables, you know?
absolutely, yeah, just keep spending that money. Uh, I did find so there's a flyer for the original Buckaroo Buffet that has one of the best ads I've ever heard. They advertise every possible variety of hot and cold entrees to appease the howling coyote in your innards.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, I want to bring back the use of innards in advertisement.
I just realized that I actually have a howling coyote inside me. I never realized it, but I feel him now. Like, this is
I feel like
awesome.
your coyote is crying.
Actually, that's probably still my bubble gut.
Yeah. uh, so now banquet versus buffet is I believe a different thing. It's I think it's an important distinction. When you picture a banquet, usually you would think of a like a medieval table where everything is spread out before a bunch of seated guests.
Family
uh,
style.
yeah, family style, and that's not generally how a buffet works. Obviously, we as gigantic Americans know how a buffet works. It's more of a grazing table. Everyone walks by, everyone grabs what they want. Certainly not what they need, uh, and just enjoys from there. Um, so yeah, that's just a little bit about the history of the buffet, because I feel like the buffet is super connected to Easter.
It is, and it's the most traditional way that you'll receive an Easter buffet if you go out, or Easter meal if you go out to eat and pay like a restaurant to eat. The other way that you might see it served is price fix, of course, where it's like, okay, $100 a head, you're going to get these courses. You may get an option, you may not, right? But it's
Yeah,
not going to. You're very rarely going to go out on Easter and find a full menu style service because the numbers are so high of how many people are going to be coming in that the restaurant wants to create as much turnover as possible, right? They want
well,
you in and out.
guarantee quality. So if the restaurant is going to be stretched beyond its capacity, its realistic capacity, then the best thing to do to maintain quality for the diner is to limit the menu,
Yep.
and that way you know that the kitchen is only focusing on these items, and you know there's going to be attention to detail, rather than having the same 35 item menu for a service that's going to have 5 times the guests.
Yep. It definitely helps out the chefs a lot too with like you said, the quality, the speed, and like I said, anytime you're dealing with a restaurant, a lot of it's going to be financial based, and they're trying to get as many tables in and out as they can because they can seat as many people as they want on Easter. It's one of those holidays that almost everywhere that's good to eat is going to be booked up. You're gonna If you try to book a week before, if you tried to book today for this Easter Sunday, you're gonna have a hard time finding a seat at a great restaurant.
Oh yeah.
Hotels traditionally are the place that kind of have unlimited seating, but they're buffet style, which is a lot different than price fix.
Yeah, the
Uh,
first time I remember, other than family gatherings, which we might get into, but the first time I remember going to an actual like location for a place of business for Easter was in Franklin. I believe the first year I moved, I lived in Tennessee. I'm going out on a limb, but I think it was at the Embassy Suites. And yeah, and yeah, Easter bunny, eggs all over the floor. But yeah, it was definitely a hotel environment.
yeah, I love Embassy Suites, by the way. No free shout outs though.
No, pay me, Doug. Send me a hat.
Yeah, it is a great place to stay though, and they always do have a decent buffet at least. It's not. I've never been disappointed with the food quality there. I'll be honest. I haven't eaten out much ever on Easter. I'm trying to think of a time that I've ever eaten out on Easter. When I was younger, it was a meal that was always served at my grandparents' house. So that's where I went, and of course we were banquet style, family style. Everything was just laid out on the table. Of course, there were so many of us that we'd have multiple tables around the room. I was doomed to the kids' table for most of my life, but
Yep.
that's just part of it. That's part of having a ton of aunts and uncles is that it takes a while to make space at the table. Uh, but I've spent most of my life working Easter brunches, so I haven't had the opportunity to be on the other side of the table very often. And
I was really lucky, like you, when I was younger, to have some family experiences with Easter brunch. I was absolutely honored to be in a family of mostly educators, uh, teachers, and the like. So Sundays were pretty accessible. So we were able to everybody gather at Grandma's house on Easter Sunday. Easter egg hunt in the front yard, and then just massive amounts of food afterwards. And yeah, it was a special time.
And it should be, and for me, that's kind of the thing about Easter is it's a family holiday, right? And so even since I've, the last year where, last year when I wasn't a cook anymore, I chose to spend it at home and just cook a little something for my family. We didn't go out. I didn't go crazy with it or anything, but um, I know what it's like out there, and I was like, I just don't want to participate in the madness, and um, being able to cook a lot of stuff at home makes it a lot easier for me to just be like, well, I know I can make it here and make it cheaper and we could save money. And I know that I'm at least going to be able to match the quality of the decent places, not the top tier, of course, but I can't afford those places anyway. So, you know.
Well, a little bit behind the veil here too. Valentine's Day, Easter, Mother's Day, all these big eating out holidays. In the industry, we largely refer to that as amateur hour. People that generally don't even care about going to a restaurant or eating out will, for some reason, feel possessed to chain themselves to a reservation, and it's a fun crowd. It's not a fun crowd. I'm being sarcastic. I hope that comes off. They're terrible.
And, that's if you're going out on Easter, the one piece of advice I would give you is to be courteous, be polite, and be thankful to the people who are providing your meal that day, because those people, I promise you, have worked very hard that day to put that food out there for you. So if you're going out, don't think you're a bad person unless you act like a bad person,
There you
okay?
go. There you
So if something goes wrong, hey, there's nothing wrong with saying something if something goes wrong or you're not happy, but it's all about the way you say it. You know what I'm saying? Start with an apology first. Say, hey, I'm sorry to have to say this. I'm not happy with this. Can we try to fix it, please? Don't be like, this is terrible. This is the worst thing I've ever eaten, because you're ruining, you're making somebody who's been working all day to provide this for you. You're making their day harder and you're making it worse. And I understand sometimes as a chef, I never had a problem with people sending food back or having complaints. The only time I ever had an issue was when they were rude to the people that were serving them, right? And if you have a problem with the way that your steak was cooked, I'm happy to fix it for you, but don't be rude to the server, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
and that's unacceptable to me, right? And um, I just wanted to point that out, that if you're going out on Easter brunch, just try to be nice to people. That's it. You're lucky to live in a country in a time period of time where it's so easy to go out and get a great meal served to you and brought to your table. It's a wonderful country and a wonderful time period we live in, and you should be grateful to be a part of it and show that gratitude to the people that serve you. And that's all I ask. So now I think we're going to talk about the traditional Easter foods. And
Oh,
maybe if we've got some tips on, what you should be serving, how you should be serving it, if you want to try to do this at home, or what you should be looking for if you're out eating, you know, we'll help you along the path here. So I think first and foremost, the number one staple meat that's served at Easter, I think personally, surprisingly, not lamb, is probably ham,
oh yeah.
because it's a cheaper cut, right? And lamb is expensive, and though it's probably the most traditional, ham is, especially in the South, the one that you're most likely to see, especially at a family Easter meal. Now, what would you recommend for somebody, Matt, who's going to prepare a ham? How would you do it?
You're really gonna hate this answer. The way I would prepare a traditional Easter like ham or roasted ham would be to quickly find the nearest honey baked ham location
Yeah,
and just buy it.
yeah.
It is more than possible to bake your own Easter ham. That is something that has always escaped me. I there are very few times in my experience of cooking for myself and for my loved ones, and even in restaurants, very few times where I choose a prepared product over something I've made myself. But man, a good, it doesn't have to be, the name brand honey baked ham, but a good sugar crusted roasted ham that you can carve. You can either heat it up, or a lot of times just leave it cold, and you can have just nice slabs of ham. And it's got the sugary crust. It's got usually a smoke ring, because a lot of people smoke them. I've just, mine have always been pre-prepared, and I've never really been burned by it. It's,
And that's a great tip for anytime you're preparing a big meal, especially for your family and you're gonna have a lot of people there, is if you can get that one item, just the main course, the main meat, just handled somewhere else and brought to you, it's gonna make your whole experience, you're gonna have so much more time and oven space to devote to your sides, which are really gonna make your meal shine. I do like, the honey baked ham. Heavenly ham is also good. What I personally do, there's a local barbecue place, it's about 30 minutes from me, that, will smoke whole bone-in hams for you.
nice.
And I'll get a one that's, been smoked for 8, 12 hours, and, if you never had a properly smoked ham, it's a game changer. I'm telling you what, it's a whole 'nother level of deliciousness, right?
Oh yeah.
And I love a lot of smoked meats, but ham has quickly become my favorite, especially if it's smoked right. It kinda comes apart almost like a pulled pork kinda thing, like you would expect a pork butt to, and it's just a different kinda way of eating it. It kinda melts in your mouth. There's no chewiness to it. It's got that great smoky flavor. The place that I do brines them, so they're super juicy.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
it's just all a game changing experience, and it's going to be something that your guests probably have never had something like. And you can try to do it at home too if you want. I would practice a couple times first, because if you mess it up, you don't want to mess up the star of the show, right? Now, if you're not going to go with a ham, you want to do something a little fancier. One option, of course, is lamb. Um, for a smaller crowd, you could do racks of lamb. You can turn racks of lamb actually into a crown roast, which is where you kind of tie you slice them individually, but you keep the bone parts connected and you tie them around in a circle,
Yeah.
and it makes it and the bones stick up and it makes it look like a crown. It's a very traditional presentation for Easter. People will do that with pork as well. Um, but I personally like a roasted lamb, especially with a herb crust. What do you think, Matt?
I'm very traditional with mine. I like a crown roast. I like a crown roast presentation, but for serving purposes, I think presenting that crown roast is very important. Get the wow factor, get everybody like, oh, look how much work you did. Like, yes, good for me. I did this for you. Uh, then take it back to the kitchen and slice it, man. Just get
Yes.
Italians, like, it's kind of impractical for people to take that off of a buffet. And I'm really old school with lamb. I love a good mint chutney. I love a chimichurri with lamb.
Yes. Yes. Chimichurri.
Yeah, something that's very, very bright and acidic. Maybe got a little spice to it to counteract the gaminess of the lamb. Not that lamb is a super gamey meat, but if every other day of the year you're eating, chicken, beef, pork, then lamb could be a challenging flavor. So it's nice to have some accompaniments that can enhance those flavors, or maybe even hide them for people that are a little scared of it.
Yeah. And there's a couple other ways to reduce gaminess too. If it's something you're concerned about in your lamb, you can marinate your lamb in advance. Or a lot of people use garlic to reduce gaminess. So they'll take whole cloves and kind of shove them deep in there to really get that garlic flavor dispensing in the meat, which will kind of hide some of that gaminess. Because it's true, lamb can be a gamey meat, especially if it's not prepared properly, right? And when I say properly, you're gonna have to have something along the way to counteract that gaminess. You're gonna marinate it, you're gonna garlic it, or you're gonna have a sauce that hides it, right? A mint chutney or a chimichurri or something like that. I have seen people do like a mint demi as well, mint demi gloss, mint gravy, something like that as well, which can be a kind of a different, like pseudo traditional, there's a lot of traditional stuff going on there, but it's not one that you normally would see. The other option for a really fancy cut would be prime rib, of course.
Oh yeah.
And I think as chefs, we all have a lot of tips on prime rib. There's prime rib is one of those great things like gardening that there's a lot of great ways to do it. So I'm really interested to hear, Matt, your thoughts on prime rib and how you would tackle that for a Easter brunch.
Uh, it's a little bit more difficult, but and not a lot of people consider brining red meat. But if you've got access, if you're at a restaurant, especially if you've got access to those big Lexan plastic containers, it's a perfect place to brine some prime rib. At home, conversely, if you've got a big cooler,
Yep.
same way. Um,
Make sure
the,
you put some ice in the water because you do want a temperature control, right? You don't want it to be
yeah,
sitting in room temp water. Let's clarify that.
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, yes. Here I am thinking everybody has access to a walk-in cooler, and that's not true. um, yeah, I'm a big fan of a simple salt and pepper crust, maybe a little herb rub as well. Take your salt and pepper crust, let it sit on the outside of that rib for 20-30 minutes, and then make a blended herb rub with some olive oil. And the herbs are up to you. Traditionally, I would use some rosemary, thyme, and parsley. Uh, but whatever you want your flavor palette to be, it's cooking, you can do whatever you want. Rub that on the outside with plenty of olive oil so it reacts, so it's got that Maillard reaction. And then throw it in the oven, and it's all about low and slow followed by high heat for me. So I don't I wouldn't even risk recommending a time. What I would recommend is getting a probe thermometer. Pardon me. And getting that probe thermometer and setting it for a good mid-rare or medium temperature, between like a 135 to a 145, depending on what you're looking for, and lean on that thermometer, because if you just lean on time, it's going to be really difficult, because animals don't care about your recipe book. They're shaped differently. They're sized differently. um, Once you hit that mark or a few degrees under it, I crank that heat to build the crust even further on the outside. And then, assuming you're going to serve it immediately, lower your oven down to a holding temperature of maybe 120 to 125, and just let it hang out. Let it rest in a nice warm temperature. Let those juices coagulate a little bit, because the last thing you want is to slice a prime rib and lose all of the delicious juice inside of it that you spent so much time working on preserving.
Yeah, this is just resting red meat in general. If you take a steak that's hot off the grill, you cut into it, look at how much juice ends up on your plate. Let it sit for 15 minutes and cut that same steak and watch how much less juice comes out. You know where that juice is? It's in your steak, and it's making it taste delicious. I like a
There's
lot of
thought that like some true steak aficionados prefer room temperature steak over even warm, because the steak has had steak or the prime rib, or what have you, has had time to completely come back together, and the juices are fully incorporated, so you lose nothing.
yeah. And don't worry about like preparing your steaks or your prime rib too early or anything because it can rest for a while and it'll still be okay. Um,
Yeah, if you're a stickler for health department rules, once that, which of course we have to be in restaurants. Once that product is finished cooking, it can hold at a safe temperature for up to 4 hours before serving, and once it's served, you have another 2-hour window to get that product out and served. After that, you're a little SOL. At home, though, it's important to follow similar rules. But we all, with family experience, and with if anyone out there is a chef, you kind of know your window. You don't necessarily have to adhere to that tight 4-hour window, but the longer you let something sit, especially warm, the more important it is that you use it immediately, and don't save that for the next day. Don't. That's a little worrisome.
Yeah, when I'm saying don't worry about it being early, it's like I'm talking about 30 minutes to an hour early. I'm not talking about, oh, I'm going to cook my steak at 8 a.m. and then they're going to be here for dinner. But like a lot of times people don't want to start their steaks until their guests arrive. And it's like, no, for me personally, I want my steaks cooked. I'm going to be pulling them off the grill when my guests arrive, and I'll put them on. Uh, uh,
Oh, Jeff. Oh, I lost you, bud. Uh, well, for the moment, I'll pick up where Jeff was talking about the steaks. If you're pulling them off the grill, on your guest's arrival, and you let them rest. I think that's a super good opportunity to show off a little bit, because what's really fun is to slice people, especially if you've got a super fun knife to use. Uh, yeah, miss you, buddy. Maybe those bubble guts were talking back to him. He had to run away.
Can you hear me?
Will, I can hear you. I'm surprised you have signal from past Jupiter at this point.
I was able to pull it in. What I did was I cross streams with the path, and I use the algorithms. So I'm live from the ether now. Jeff,
you have a really nice setup for being in the ether.
Jeff vanished. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but this is perfect timing for me to hop in here because you're talking steak, prime rib, some of my primo things that I absolutely love talking about. And one of the things, I'm not sure what the restaurant terminology would be for Eskimo Brothers, but you and I have been in and out of a few of the same restaurants in our path. And one of them talked a lot about when I was there, the pull your steak 5 under, let the residual heat in the rest, bring it up, like sending the steaks out at not quite room temperature because people are going to be dumb and send it back that their steaks are cold, but like some of the more higher end ways of handling beef. I had no idea these existed until I worked at a high end steakhouse or a nice fine dining restaurant. And when people order, they go to a Logan's and they order a steak. They don't understand that it's like levels to that beef.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's levels to it. There's different ways you have to treat it. Will, if you'll keep walking with me here, we'll move on, I think, to another food item that I know Jeff wanted to touch on that's big for me is deviled eggs.
Yes.
Deviled eggs are huge for Easter. They're huge all the time, especially in the South. You can't throw a stick and not hit a deviled egg. The cool thing about deviled eggs for me is, if you walk with me for just a moment, if you were to take a hard-boiled egg with no salt, no pepper, no olive oil, no nothing, and eat it, it's almost nothing. There's very, very little flavor to it. That's the cool thing about a deviled egg, is you can treat it as a blank slate. A lot of people think it has to involve dill, it has to have your mayonnaise, it has to have relish, all of these things, but you can make anything you want out of a deviled egg. Just personally, the ones that I've remembered, I've done a honey butter and biscuit crumble deviled egg. I've done, looking at my messages. No, Jeff, I'm sorry, you're not live anymore. Honey butter biscuit deviled egg. I've done BLTs. You can, it's limitless. And it's always a crowd pleaser.
One of my favorite things just is when you think of the components of a deviled egg, the boiled egg white, and then that egg yolk mousse. Big thanks to Desiree Delight for the subscription there. That mousse, like you said, completely blank canvas here because I've had everything from Chipotle bacon deviled eggs all the way through just the traditional like church on Sunday with smoked paprika on top deviled eggs. You can do anything with it. Meringue your whites and bake them and pipe it in. Literally a completely blank canvas here. You can do it there. Ironically, it's a lot like chicken where you can literally do whatever the hell you want with
it. Yeah. And again, like chicken, we keep coming back to this very similar vein here of doing simple things very well. I think speaks a lot to from a home cook all the way to a restaurant chef. It speaks a lot to their skill. If you can nail a deviled egg, if you can nail a chicken, if you can nail a biscuit, those are really important factors in presenting yourself as a host or as a chef or whatever you're trying to pull off there.
It's the important, the whole, there's 102 folds in a chef's toque thing. When it comes to the 102 different ways to cook an egg. And that's no bullshit. Like I've been in cook tests where they're like, okay, we need you to make an over easy egg. And I'm like, okay, but then they're like, no, but we want you to make 10 over easy eggs in 5 pans at the same time. And then you're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
Like it's a very different approach on life when they give you very specified parameters and they're like, we want to see you do this. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Over
it's
easy.
very unique.
I want a well, and I want them all at the exact same time.
I'm gonna get Jeff switched back over now.
Yeah.
It'll be live, so I was like giving my whole spiel to the ether there. Like
Well, we moved on slightly. We started talking about deviled eggs. I think Will and I had a little riff there. Will, are you back in space? Give me a thumbs up. Oh yeah, okay. He's gone. Probably not forever, but he's gone.
Okay, well, I'll talk about my little deviled egg thing here for a second. I do think it's a staple of an Easter dish. I think deviled eggs are a very personal thing. Some people put onions in them. I don't like onions in mine because it adds a crunch to it that I'm not a fan of. I'll put green onion in mine. The best deviled egg I ever actually had was actually made by a fellow chef one time. He just made them kind of as a family meal kind of thing, and he went with mustard, ketchup, and bacon, and that was it. And it just really blew me away, man. I was just like, and a touch of relish, obviously, but just like so simple, and not much to it. And I think that's really the key with deviled eggs is don't try to overdo it and keep it simple. I do want to go back to the prime rib thing for just a second, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
For me, prime rib, my keys for a prime rib, obviously this is, like I said earlier, this is going to be very different for everybody. There's a lot of different ways to get to great prime rib. But I'm going to want a bone-in cut. Okay. Because I like the way it looks. I do think that the bone adds something. I don't think it adds a ton of flavor, but I just think it adds something to the presentation. And to me, it makes it easier to move around and cook a little bit because it gives you something to rest it on in the pan. I can grab the bones and just pick it up like that, right? If you want to tie it up at all, it gives you a nice little vessel to tie to. But I'm going to look for something bone in, and I want a good fat cap on it. Okay, a lot of people they're going to see it and they're going to be like, "Oh, I'm going to have to cut that off." No, you're not going to cut that off. What you're going to do is you're going to score it. An X style scoring. You want about 1-inch diamonds. You're just trying to get through the fat cap to the meat, not into the meat. It's okay if you cut into the meat a little bit. What you don't want is to not cut all the way through the fat. And then I'm going to put so much salt on it, you're going to think that you can't eat it. Okay, I mean, I'm going to coat this thing in salt, all sides, and I'm going to sit it in my fridge uncovered for 24 to 72 hours and let that salt soak all the way through the meat.
Oh, nice. So you're curing it.
Instead of a brine, I'm doing a cure.
Love that.
Right, and then I'm going to go the opposite of Matt on the cooking. But here's the thing: we're doing the same thing. We're just doing it in opposite directions, right? I'm going to turn my oven up hot, throw my prime rib in there, cook it. Depending on my temperature, I like to start hot, maybe 350, 400, maybe an hour, right? Just to get a nice solid crust on the outside. I'm going to turn my oven off and just let that residual heat bring it up. The oven's getting cooler. The prime rib is getting warmer. And they just kind of, I found there's a nice balance there where about hour and a half, 2 hours later, sometimes up to 3 hours, depending on the size of your roast. Like Matt said, sometimes there's guesswork because some of them are going to be thick. Some of them are going to be thin and long. Every animal is different, but at some point there, and this is where it's great to get a thermometer where you don't have to open the door. Maybe it has a cord that comes out, or it's wireless or something like that. At some point there, you're going to hit the temperature that you want, and I'm going to pull my roast out. I'm going to rest it for a cut this size. I want to rest it for a minimum of 30 minutes, maybe even an hour before I'm ready to cut. And then, like Matt was talking about earlier, with the crown roast, especially any kind of bone-in thing, by the time this thing hits the table, you're not gonna see the bones anymore. This thing's gonna be sliced up and ready for just people to just grab it up and put it on their plate. Okay, because I don't want my guests trying to have to deal with that at the table. Right? I certainly don't want, while I'm elbow deep in some mac and cheese, to have to get up and go cut somebody another piece of prime rib. You know what I'm saying? Like when I sit down, I'm eating, I'm done. Right.
Well, something we almost touched on earlier that I wanted to mention, especially for a family gathering or a friends gathering, for an Easter situation. I believe I picked up this tip from, I want to say it was Allison Roman's book. The book is Nothing Fancy. It's a very accessible cookbook that's got some fun recipes and fun philosophies about it. I think the pressure to have everything on the table at the exact same time is a little unnecessary, especially if the people around you are loved ones, and they're not. You don't have to impress the people that you love. You just want to show them you want to give love to them. So if your dishes are coming out 5-6 minutes apart, and everybody's kind of eating progressively and enjoying, that's okay. You as a host, you've already done the work to prepare food and put your heart out there for everyone. Like, learn to relax, learn to have an enjoyable time, and don't constrain yourselves to an egg timer where everything has to be on the plate at the exact same time. I promise everyone's still going to have a really good time.
And ask your guests to bring things. Great guests will always ask you, "What can I bring?" And instead of saying plastic cups and stuff that you could buy at the store, say, "Hey, how would you feel about making a potato gratin or a mac and cheese or something like that?"
Yeah.
And those are two of the other dishes that I wanted to talk about, good side dishes. When speaking to what you were talking about, everything coming out at once, what I love about both of these, the potato gratin, scalloped potato, and the mac and cheese, is they hold really well after they've been cooked. And
Yes.
people aren't really going to mind if it's at room temperature instead of hot. If you have a mashed potato, somebody gets cold mashed potatoes, they're not going to enjoy them, right? But a potato gratin will hold its temperature longer than a mashed potato. And if somebody gets it at room temperature, it's still going to be delicious because it's going to be creamy and soft, and it's going to have so much cheese in it. And it's kind of the same way with mac and cheese. I've eaten plenty of room temperature mac and cheese that was fantastic.
Oh,
And
yeah.
for me, the key to both a good potato gratin and a good mac and cheese is something that most people don't do in America anymore, is bechamel.
Yeah, thick.
And it's just thickened milk, all it is. You might throw a little nutmeg in there, salt and pepper. But if you really want to knock people's socks off with any kind of creamy baked dish, learn how to make a bechamel and learn how to turn that into whatever sauce you want to make next, right? Because it's one of the mother sauces, right? It's from bechamel. You can do so many different things. It's so easy to make. I want to say it's a gallon of milk to a cup of roux, or is it a quart to a cup?
Honestly, man, that's doing a bechamel is one of those sauces that it comes from my soul.
Yeah.
When I build a roux, for anyone that's uninitiated here, that's cooking your flour in butter to kind of cook out the moisture and make a thickening agent, uh, and then you add milk to that, rather than a stock or something you would for a soup or a gumbo or anything like that. So then, I shouted out thick milk baby because I love thick milk, and from there you can add more cream. You can add any kind of seasoning or cheese you want.
Cheese.
Yeah, there's a reason it's called a mother sauce. Like the other mother sauces, it's a vehicle to do whatever you want with. Like,
Yep.
especially for mac and cheese, you can go any cheese route you want. You can go blue, cheddar, Gouda. I can just keep naming cheeses, and I'm going to run out of them. But yeah, the bechamel is very important, and it is so easy. Sometimes people get afraid of the French terminology, but it is very simple.
Every time I host a big meal, one of the biggest compliments I always get is, "Your mac and cheese is so incredible." I'm like, it's like the best mac and cheese I've ever had. And
Yeah,
the secret is bechamel. I'm telling you right now, the secret is bechamel. And once you've tried real mac and cheese made the French way, you'll never go back. You'll never go back to the Velveeta and milk. Not that I don't love my mom's recipe. I do. It has a special place in my heart. It really does. So there's some holidays where I'm like, I want my mom to make it just so I can have that childhood remembrance. But the French know food, okay? And you can learn a lot from them. And one of the great things that you can learn is the mother sauces, and bechamel is one of the great ones.
I do
Um,
have all the time in the world for Velveeta, though. Boy, I do love that.
Other than that, I think traditionally you're going to want spring vegetables, some sort of spring vegetable, maybe multiple spring vegetables. And when you're preparing your meal, this is probably going to be the last thing you throw together, unless it's like a roasted carrot or something like this, because this is something that you are going to want to still be hot when it hits the table. And generally, it's not going to take a long time to prepare. A roasted or sauteed asparagus is going to take 10 to 15 minutes, right? Sugar snap peas, you're going to saute them in a pan. It's going to take 10 minutes. It's not going to take long at all.
Yeah.
The only ones that I think may take a little bit of time and would be roasted carrots, which is actually going to take a little bit of timing on your part. And then, of course, in the South, we talked about this last week, you're going to have collard greens. and,
Oh,
and that's a good one that it can stay warm in the pot, right? You can just keep it on low. If it goes 30 minutes, an hour extra, it's not going to kill the collard greens, I can tell you that. And you can always reheat it a little bit when it's time, or put it in a slow cooker or something like that.
I've got a fun cheat code for the roasted carrots. For me, I like to use the baby heirloom carrots, the really tiny multicolored ones.
Leave the tops on too.
Oh yeah. Leave the tops. Don't peel them. Just wash them. You can roast those early and leave them at room temperature. And what I like to do is a little combo of warm spices. Think nutmeg, cinnamon, maybe a touch of cumin. And then I make a honey and Tabasco sauce and pull all that together. Keep that hot on the stove. It takes nothing to just keep something warm on a stovetop. So you can roast those carrots off ahead of time, toss them at the last minute, and that hot sauce will bring the temperature back up. And then you've got a nice, sticky, sweet, spicy roasted carrot dish.
Oh yeah, that's great. And I'm mentioning carrots. We haven't talked about sous vide cooking very much on this podcast. I do think sous vide cooking has some very specific uses that are very great, and a lot of stuff where people use it. And maybe there's other better ways to do it. But carrots is one of those things that I think sous vide cooking really shines on. It really brings out the carrot flavor. And I've seen some recipes that you can sous vide your carrots with all the honey glazed ingredients in there, throw it in your fridge after, and you can just throw it in the pan and kind of saute it so your sauce thickens up to serve. So that can turn your carrots into something you can make days in advance and have ready in 10 minutes.
Oh, I
So
love that.
that can
Love
be a nice little cheat code if you are familiar with that kind of cooking. And speaking of washing the carrots, and this is something I wanted to mention with that is something I've learned recently. A great way to wash your fruit and vegetables is in a big bowl of hot water, but throw a little bit of baking soda in the water, because what it does is add a little bit of grit in there, and you kind of move them around, and that can help scrub some of that dirt off and make sure that you're getting everything off of it without having to add any kind of chemical or please don't put soap on your vegetables. Don't do that. Okay. Water, maybe baking soda. You can get some natural solvents from places, from some
I like
grocery
to wash
stores.
with Dawn soap specifically.
Yeah, I put them in the dishwasher personally.
Yeah,
That's
it does all the work for you.
you know they're getting clean then, right? And they come out half
I wonder
cooked.
though, if you did put your veggies in a dishwasher and you didn't put soap in it, I mean,
Is that a steamed vegetable?
I reckon it would be at that point.
Water's a little hot, I think.
That's for
We should create a electronic, some kind of mechanical fruit and veggie washer.
brother. If I had a dishwasher at my house, I would be experimenting with this tonight.
All right, let's finish up real quick. What do you want to see on a dessert table at Easter, Matt?
Oh man, as much as I love a good, well thought out pastry, I've got kind of a small sweet tooth, especially when it comes to Easter brunch. As not a lot, too much. I think obviously carrot cake comes to mind, and also in the South, hummingbird cake,
Oh
would
yeah,
really really good. Um,
I like that.
yeah, that's about all I think of. I'm a very I'm a big savory boy. I'm a
Yeah.
little sweet boy.
Well, traditionally, a lot of people will serve sugar cookies decorated in some sort of Easter fashion, right? Maybe shape them like eggs and decorate them. Um, another really traditional one is a coconut cake that's shaped like a rabbit because the coconut mimics rabbit fur.
I forgot that. That's
Can't go wrong with a chocolate cake. Any kind of dessert you want to put out there is going to be fine. If you really want to wow your guests, though, cream brulee is incredibly easy to make, but nobody seems to know how to do it. Maybe we'll do a cream brulee episode soon, but I mean, it's literally just eggs, cream, sugar, whatever kind of flavoring you want, vanilla or whatever. Hey, you're just gonna bake it in your oven for a little bit and then put it in your fridge. Or yeah, I mean, you don't even have to put it in your fridge, but you can. And little
I think
torch.
the only gatekeeper there is owning a torch.
Yeah, I've seen people do it with a broiler.
Really?
It's not quite as good, right? You do heat up the cream a little bit more than you will with a torch, but it's definitely possible. I've seen it done under salamanders in restaurants and in rush situations before. It's like we got to get out 50 creme brulees in 10 minutes. Under the salamander they go, right? I mean, how can we get these tops hot real quick? You know?
You got that, or you got 6 people with torches.
Yeah. But when you only got one torch in the kitchen, you know, it's lack of planning, I think. But we've come to the end of our show, so now it's time for you guys to show us your dirt.
Give me that belly.
Yeah. Show us what you're eating. Twitter at the Dirty Belly, Instagram at the Dirty Belly, Facebook the Dirty Belly Show. Okay. If you guys don't start showing us some food, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna show up naked next time. Okay. So you don't want that. Okay.
Hell yeah.
You don't. I'm telling you, you don't want that. My wife can't handle it. You can't either. All right. Let's give some shout outs to our fellow shows.
Do it.
Here on Rivet City Radio. We got tea and hot takes tomorrow night, Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. They talk about anything and everything there, whatever Will Gray wants to talk about with whoever he happens to be talking to. Will, get in my ear here. Who are you talking to this week? It's a wrestling episode. John Wayne Murdoch, King of the Death Match, coming on for tea and hot takes. After that, trivia night, 8 p.m. Thursday, featuring 2 of the biggest, awesome homies you will ever meet in your life, Matt Gaddis and Jeff Sims, co-hosts of this wonderful show. I mean, if you've sat here and listened to this for this long, surely you can tune in to listen to us look like fools and find out that we're not as smart as a 4th grader. Okay, so
yeah, I already know that's going to be the category that I fall on my face. Like, Will told producer Will told us we got food and music, and are you smarter than the 5th grader? And I can tell
5th grader, yeah,
I am not as smart as a 5th grader. So
yeah, that's going to be the one question I get right when they ask me, "Are you as smart as a 5th grader?" No, I know. Yeah. Yes, yeah, you finally got one right. Good job, Jeff. So thank you, hungry homies, for joining us today on our journey of learning more about the food we eat. And peace out, y'all. Happy Easter.
Thanks, everybody. Happy Bunny Day.
Be nice if you go out. Be nice.